Hello, everybody. Welcome to the show. We've got special guest. This is Comic Collector Geek with me. You've probably seen him before on this channel or just all around YouTube because he puts out a video every single day. He's been doing that for the past, was it 25 years, Allan?
It's actually only been a couple of years.
And this particular video is the sister video to another one that is on Allan's channel. And what we're talking about is horror-related comic books, which fits the time because this is right before Halloween. And we're also right in Allan's wheelhouse. So Allan loves horror covers. He loves the seduction of the innocent books. And so we are going to talk a little bit about that. And we're also going to show some really cool comic books. So Allan's going to show two, and I'm going to show two as well. Before we show any books, though, Allan, I wanted to ask you, how did you get into horror comic books?
It's kind of a weird story in a way. Like I've been collecting comics. Like to me, collecting comics and breathing are kind of, I did them around the same time. So, like I've been collecting comics since I was a kid. My parents always gave me comics and stuff. But they always gave me the Disney stuff, the kind of the very, innocent stuff. And I was one of those kids that was a bit of a wimp as a kid. Like I was a total wimp when it came to scary stuff. I was like I couldn't watch horror movies. And one of my friends had a birthday party, okay? And they played Werewolf in London at this birthday party. I mean, I must have been pretty young at the time. I think it was grade 5, grade 6 level. And there was a scene where the werewolf, jumped, and I got scared. And now when I got scared, everyone else is like trying to be brave and stuff, and I got scared, and I was horrendously teased the next day at school, oh, Allan's such a wimp, blah, blah, blah. So I decided, hey, I'm not going to be a wimp anymore. And I decided, I really didn't like to be teased about, being scared. So I deliberately watched horror movies, and I actually realized that I really love horror movies. So, I had that natural inkling towards horror, and it just, I just love horror movies. I've pretty much watched every horror movie you can imagine, good and bad, especially the bad, because most horror movies are on the bad side. But that really kind of got married with comic collecting. The gruesome covers I actually think are really funny because I grew up in the 80s. That was my time, and it was all like gore and ultra violence and stuff like that. And the first thing that I collected horror-wise was actually famous monsters. I'm a big Warren collector. And so that sort of led me into comics as well, because, they would mention a lot of horror related stuff. And, I kind of gravitated to the pre-code horror now. It's actually been sort of a very slow progression to that, believe it or not. But I'm finding that I'm really enjoying the pre-code horror stuff. There's some, but it's one of those things that's hard to chase because they're so bloody expensive.
Yeah, that's great. I want to give a quick plug. The channel out there is called "It's So Bad It's Good," and I don't know if you've seen it or not.
I haven't seen it, but I can imagine.
There's a fellow named Jason Brandt who lives one state above me in Maryland, and he and his wife and some friends will watch these old movies from the 80s and 90s, a lot of horror movies, and they'll comment on them. And he does a great job on them. He's actually a author of horror books himself. So I'll put that link in there. So I think many of the audience that listens to our channels, they're, kids of the 80s and the 90s. And so they'll probably appreciate that. So that being said, without further ado, let me see one of those awesome horror books you've got, Allan.
Okay. So I'm going to show you, this one. I'm going to actually show you two.
Okay.
I'm not really good at just showing one of something. So there's this one, and this is Terrifying Tales. It's by Star Publications or Star Comics, which was owned by L.B. Cole. So L.B. Cole was the one that owned this company, And he basically got the rights to reprint stuff from a different publisher, Novelty Press, I believe it was. But what he was an artist, like he was like, and he's a phenomenal artist, like
Sure.
probably one of the greats of the golden age. So what he would do is, you know, if he just reprinted the book, it probably wouldn't sell. Nobody wanted, even back then, they didn't really like the reprints. But what he would do is create these amazing covers and then put, you know, the other stuff on the inside, the reprint inside. So his covers were just phenomenal. Like, you know, he's known for his colors, and he's known for these like just really almost psychedelic colors that he uses. And the reason I mentioned this one is what we were talking about a lot about investment on the first part of this thing is it has like all the classic elements to what you want in a horror book. If you're gonna, you know, pick a book just purely as an investment idea or as a, you know, as a something that is just cool, like you want to find things with devils on them from the golden age, always popular. Like, and this has that really predominant devil figure on it. Another thing is, though she's not in the red dress, she makes up for it because she's in bondage. Okay, so the girl's in bondage. That's another kind of classic feature that people look for. And it's just got these great colors, and it's a great artist. So there's just so many things going for this book that I really enjoy it. I thought it was a really cool book. And yeah, presents really well too, even though it's a low grade. It's like a 3.0, but it presents
that's
well.
a great book. I didn't know you had that copy. It's something else, Allan, that you mentioned. It's like what's popular in a comic book cover, it's like the basic elements of the world, right? If you got a lot of fire on there, which it does, you got either heaven or hell. And unfortunately, depending on kind of your orientation, like hell often sells better than heaven.
Yeah, exactly.
And you know, having a you know, scantily clad woman on there, whether, you know, she's good, the hero, she's bad, whether she's you know, breaking out of chains or whether she's in them, that tends to work well. So real quick too, that's something that L.B. Cole was about. So there's like the prominent image, and then if you look closer to it, he's usually got some subtle things in the background.
Yeah.
And he often too will take something where it's actually like a pretty big figure, but you won't even see it until you look at it closer. So he just was sort of this master of hidden images and covers.
Yeah, there will be lots of little things. You might not even notice it until maybe third or fourth time that you looked at it. Like when with this one, like I really didn't notice the characters in the back until like, you know, I actually got the book in my hand. I was like, oh, there's actually all this extra stuff going on in the back. It's a very cool cover. And one of the things that he did a lot with these terrifying tales is he would have like this big, long, like little bubble on the cover where it's like, you know, kind of hinting at the story that's inside.
How much did you pay for that one, Allan?
It was about 1,000.
1,000, yeah. And we were talking about some investment tips too. L.B. Cole is one of the, I don't know, top 3 or 5 cover artists of the golden age, just super well known. And some of his like masterpieces in that grade would be $10,000 or more. Yeah. But there's these books that are like level 2, so still well known.
This is level 2.
Yeah, still well known, super cool. And again, they cost $1,000 in you know, low mid grade. Yeah,
I mean, L.B. Cole is generally pretty expensive.
Right.
Like especially his horror stuff is kind of like his 2 big genres were horror and romance.
Yeah.
And some of his romance books are quite popular. Actually, I just as an aside, you might appreciate this. Do you know teenage romances?
Yes, of course.
Yeah, I got his big book from that just yesterday. I won it. And I won it.
Congratulations.
There's usually the reprints of those books. I got the original, which is ultra rare. It's really cool. And I got it for a really great price. So I was quite excited about that. So,
well, I'll go to my first book, and this has got a really striking cover. And that's pun intended, by the way.
Oh, that's cool.
This is Mysterious Adventures book, and I'm not too familiar with this series, but I just saw that cover. I was like, I have to get it. I'm a big fan of bowling, and it's
Mhm.
also with some of these horror books. It's sort of horror comedy too. So you have the lady in red in the background, and she's like, "Bill, Bill, where's my bill?" And then the dude who is a skeleton was like, "Here's your bill," and but all you see of poor Bill is his skull, and it's being used as a bowling ball. And apparently, that guy's a pretty good bowler because he's able to use that skull to knock over the pins. Dick Beck is the
Mhm.
artist here. But yeah, I thought that's pretty fun.
I've never seen that one before.
Yeah, isn't that wild? Like I hadn't either. And this is just what I saw. I got it on the CGC boards, and it was something like $250. So not bad. And
Yeah,
it
that's
looks
great.
maybe a little bit more like a 2 or 2.5, but the cover's
Yeah, it's
detached.
just
So of
that one
course,
corner that has an issue, it looks like.
yeah. So there's a little problem there. But yeah, the colors look nice and it's fun, and a great Halloween book, I think. And it kind of got that spirit of Halloween where it's like, ghoulish, but at the same time a little goofy. So yeah, I'm
Yeah,
a
no,
big
that's
fan of
really
that.
great.
And yeah, on the back too, it's like if you're looking for shaping underwear, you
It
know where to
looks like
order it from.
it almost looks like diapers.
Yeah, it's the oldie version of Spanx with diapers on
Yeah. Oh man. That's really funny. So yeah, I mean that's another thing like that people don't realize. Like a lot of these golden age books that we collect, it was really the Gerber guide, the photo journal
it. Yeah,
that sort of brought those to like a lot of them you could have picked up really cheap. I think it was on your channel that you were talking about, you were looking at the old Overstreet guide, and they would literally show like, 1 through 50 of some book. And it would be, or number 1 would be a little bit, it would be separated out, but number 2 to 50 would be like $10 or
yeah,
some fixed price. And you wouldn't know what the covers would look like in between those numbers. So everything would be $10, everything would be that same set price. And it was really the photo journal that changed that, where people
right,
were like, oh, wait, this is a pretty cool cover, like Punch 12. It's like, oh,
sure,
all of a sudden, that's a really cool skull cover that we got to pick up, or, suspense, whatever. It's one of those things like when people don't know that it's out there,
right,
it doesn't have any value. But once they discover it, like that bowling one, now that's something I got to look for because it's a cool cover. It's like, wow, that's really weird. That's just such a weird, cool cover, and people will start chasing it. You'll get these one-off books that nobody, like that one, nobody's seen it before. Nobody,
right,
like, there's no set value in people's minds of how much it's worth.
right,
So the first time it goes up for auction, it generally goes pretty cheap. And then the second time, people are like a little bit more aware,
right.
and there'll be some interest because they'll say that is a cool cover, and generally you'll get the price will kind of jump because people are like realizing how cool it was. So I think that's a great book to have picked up.
Oh yeah, thanks. Yeah, so that's kind of how it works for me. Is that yeah, as we talked about before, see all these covers before our eyes, and you just sort of skimming through websites and whatnot. Then all of a sudden you'll
Mhm.
stop for a second. You'll like that catches your eye, and
Yep.
then you usually won't buy it the first time though. But the
Yep.
second or third time you see it, you'll buy it. And yeah, I saw that book and I was like, that's got a lot of the elements of what would make a classic cover. Skulls, by the way, are something that's really cool, and especially if it's something like
Mhm.
it's got something pithy on the cover too. It's like, hey,
Mhm.
that's just it's funny, and yeah. So I think that's a great deal. And sometimes too, Alan, I think it was a case where, as you said, like another copy of this book might have been at Heritage, and it might have sold like a 5.0, might have sold for like 1,200. And I was like, I've
Mhm.
never seen that book, and I love it. And then the second time I saw it, 1.5, and I was like,
Mhm.
a book that strikes me and is a couple hundred bucks, and it's golden age. I'll get it every time.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, at that price,
Yeah.
it's got like a cool cover,
Yeah.
cool price. I would be like jumping all over that price.
Yeah.
But for pre-code horror, and do you know how many of those are on the census? I always ask this, like, how many do you know?
It's not many. And I think it's
Yeah.
probably due to the reason you suggested. I think that this book, people can correct me if I'm wrong, they're listening. I think it's really under the radar. And so I think there's probably quite a few out there, but maybe a couple dozen were on census. And part of that's because in low grade, like at a 1.5, it probably it's iffy whether it makes sense to get it slabbed or not from a financial perspective.
Yeah. But what you might be surprised with is there might not be that many copies out there. Like,
could be,
if it's one of those books where, and you don't, sometimes you don't know until a book gets hot, right? A book has to get hot before people will say, oh, I better get this graded.
right?
But a lot of the pre-code horror, the reason it's so sought after is pretty rare. Like, we were talking earlier on my channel about a book that has 50 copies. And we were saying that that's actually fairly common. That's a more common book for the golden age.
Right.
Well, 50 copies isn't that many.
Right.
That's, and probably that book is in that similar range where there's just probably not that many copies. And there's a lot more collectors for that than there are copies.
And one of the main reasons I got it was because Allan's collection is just so daggone strong in the horror area. I was like, if I'm going to do a video with them, I at least have to have a couple of cool books that I can show. So Allan, in part, you are responsible for me buying that book.
Wow, that's interesting. So I've cost you a few $100s. This is like an expensive video for Keston. I think we're going to spend all this money just to do a video.
That's right. And let me tell you something also that just for the viewer, something that's really easy to do is super easy to get Allan interested in the comic book.
Yeah.
So you just saw this, like he's making notes. He's like, I got to get that skull.
So like usually I'm like adding to my want list. So now it's like in there. So that's one of the bad problems with me. I'm very easily influenced to buy more stuff that I don't need. But it's a great book. So I'm going to show my last one, and I was debating about this one, which one I should show. I have actually two that I could potentially show, which are two different themes. Actually, I'm going to show something different. I'm going to actually go with the third choice.
Okay.
I bring whenever we do these videos, I always bring a ton of books, and give myself lots of options. So I kind of wanted to pick something that's kind of cool. And kind of, I have to compete with you because you showed something cool. So I got to show something cool.
Oh, wow.
This is Steve Ditko cover. Really, famous artist. Most famous for his Spider-Man, actually. But this is like one of his masterpieces for pre-code horror. It's the famous electrocution covers. It's like this is Strange Suspense Stories number 19. It's a classic cover, just a classic cover. I think it even says that classic execution cover. There's actually two books that are kind of considered the big grails for execution covers. This is one of them. The other is Weird, I think it's Weird Mysteries or something like that. The reason these are considered the kind of the two grails for execution covers is usually with the execution cover, the execution is in the background. That it's sort of like, it's not the prominent feature of the book. And this is one of those ones where it's almost the full cover, which is the execution. And if you look at it, like you can see every muscle is tense. He's got sweat pouring down his face. It's just a brilliant cover. And it's one of those ones where it's like the operator, I've got to get through. He's innocent, and he's like going to get fried, basically. What I always look for is that kind of, what is the theme? In this case, it's execution cover. And how prominent is that image on the cover? And this has that, and that's what I was kind of looking for in terms of this book. And generally, collectors will kind of gravitate towards that. So this is
that's great. Yeah, well, a couple things there, as you mentioned, Allan. One is that people think of Steve Ditko as doing this sort of innocent early and mid 1960s art for Spider-Man, which is great, right? but then he's got these like crazy books out there. So just some horror, like that cover you just showed. He did one, and I'm going to show the name there in a caption. And you have this like bomb that's blowing up in a store, and you have this like Tiny Tim kid with a cane, this big blown up, and his shirt is like in ribbons, and you're just like, wow, what a horrible book. Like it kind of looks like a PG cover, but with the R theme, if that makes sense.
Yeah,
because it's nothing that graphic, but you're just like, geez, Ditko, why are you showing this small kid with a cane getting blown to smithereens? Anyway, it's nuts. And then the with the art for the cover you just showed, what's kind of interesting to me is like how cut that dude is getting fried. It was like, that guy's got like 3% body fat, and he must have been working out in his prison for the last 2 years nonstop to get that buff.
I think they really wanted to show every little sinew of his muscles, like every little vein popping and stuff.
It was funny about those too, is oftentimes those books are billed as being like anti-crime. Like they'll say that like in small letters somewhere, but they showed the most like heinous aspects of criminality. And I think that they put like anti-crime in there just so people won't get mad. It was like, hey, look, we put anti-crime on there, so therefore this is a really family-friendly book.
Yeah.
Do you know what year that book is in? Is it late 40s?
1954.
Okay.
So it is like another thing that this is 7th month 54, so July 54, which another thing with pre-code horror that people don't realize is the books that are at the later end, you'd think, oh, the older books are more valuable. Not necessarily. The ones that are closer to where the code happened are the ones that were more likely to have been destroyed, because they were books that people had ready at hand. They were books that were used in the Senate hearings. There were ones that were on the chopping block in terms of what books are going to get destroyed first.
That's right.
Most people, when they were lighting the books on fire, basically, they didn't say, "Oh, I got to find these old books that maybe I had like 10 years ago." They're going to find books that they have ready at hand. Right. And so a lot of the ones that were actually later in the pre-code horror stuff are the ones that actually are more scarce. There's just not as many copies of them.
Yeah. And I was just thinking, when you said that year 1954, that's bumping right up to when the code was implemented.
It was March of 55 that
March 55,
the code really first happened. So it's not that many months later.
Well, let me switch to my last book, and it's very appropriate. Let me get it out here, put my glasses on for a second. I just want to check when the date is, and you know this one well. Okay, yep. So this one came out in April and May of 1954. Allan, I know you've got a copy of this too, but I think it is the ultimate pre-code book in many ways, mostly because of the timing, right? So this is a book that came out right as Congress and other folks were investigating how comic books and comic book covers might be affecting the youth. And this is the like super famous Johnny Craig cover. And again, you got this lady who has been beheaded, and then off to the side you can see her body, and you see this like grisly axe. And one of the I think creepiest things about this cover is that you can't see the murderer's head. And and you can imagine, like, this is pretty brutal. And for these 8-year-old kids to be like, where they buying like some gum, candy bar, and crime suspense stories number 22. It's like, what is happening with the youth of America? And Allan, I know you're a SOTY expert, Seduction of the Innocent, and this book actually did not appear in Seduction of the Innocent. And I think it's because it came out after the book was written. Maybe when was the Seduction of the Innocent book published, by the way?
It was April of 54.
Okay, April 54. So the book was published about the same time this book hit the newsstand. Actually, I hadn't put that together either, but like that big book came out and the people were looking at the newsstand, they were like, holy cow, this is really exemplifies the type of book that would typically be put in Seduction of the Innocent. But yeah, the more, every time I look at this book, this Johnny Craig cover, it just, it fascinates me. And it just speaks to this period of time about like, the 50s weren't so innocent. You know what I mean?
No, no, no.
Yeah. So they really had to like, crack down. And I can understand if I was a parent and being like, this just doesn't, sit right with me.
Yeah, I mean, there is sort of a thing where I can understand where parents would say, hey, should we be selling this to our kids?
Yeah.
Right. But what I was going to say is that book is actually probably the most historically significant book.
Yeah.
In terms of any book. It's got the most influence on comics. Like, everyone thinks Action won, but for me, that book, the one you just showed, is the most historically significant because it was the one that led to the Comic Code Authority.
Yeah.
It is the one that changed comics forever, and still we're still feeling the effects of that one book.
Yeah.
What happened was within a month of the Seduction of the Innocent being released, they had the Senate hearings.
Right.
And we're literally, the book was just like, this is the last straw. We're gonna, the activism was at its peak. Parents were like wits end. Juvenile delinquency was going crazy. Everyone was freaking out, and they had the Senate hearings, and that book was the one that they put on these big posters, big poster of it. They blew it up, and they said, "Do you think this is appropriate?" And he's like, "Yeah, it's William Gaines basically, said it was, it was tastefully done."
Right.
And that was a big mistake, just a big mistake, made headline news, and they had to respond to it.
Yeah.
And it was just, that book ended the golden age. Within months of that book coming out, we had the Comic Code Authority, literally hundreds of publishers went out of business.
Well, y'all, thanks so much for watching. Again, this is the sister video of one that Allan and I did on these horror comic books. So go on to Allan's channel and check out that video. I have the link in the description box below. Allan, as always, it's great to have you on, my friend. You always surprise me with your breadth of knowledge. And so hopefully we can do something really soon together.
Okay, thanks again for doing this. This is always fun doing stuff with you.